Morning. Today is Thursday, January 26th, 2023. My name is Charlotte and I am known as the Trauma-Informed Teacher. This is a channel not about student trauma per se, although it also impacts what we do, but about preventing teacher trauma through being overwhelmed. So it's a channel about teacher self-care and how to balance work and family life. It's also a channel where any busy working person can come to get tips for how to stay sane in our very busy culture. So today's Friday teacher tip that I'm actually recording on Thursday is all about doing projects as assessment in your classroom. Yesterday I attended a curriculum meeting and we were discussing that project-based learning, it's not just for the process of learning, but it's also a great assessment tool and can be used as a final test instead of a standardized type of test. So I'm working on a project in my class this year with the 6th grade. It's through Annenberg Media, and they have various projects that are available on a site called journeynorth.com. And so a lot of these projects track seasonal migration patterns and changes throughout the year. And you can decide which one you're most interested in. There's a hummingbird migration, monarch butterfly, the robins. There are studies about pollinators, songbirds, all these different things that you can get into. But the one that I have worked with that I really enjoy is the tulip test gardens. I started doing this when I taught elementary school, and so I've planted several gardens in the United States. I have a garden in Ohio that is, from what I understand, still coming up every year. I have 2 gardens at 2 different elementary schools, and they actually did some work on the buildings, and they preserved the tulip garden, so it makes a lasting impact on your school. It'll be there long after you're gone. So this is a project that tracks the seasons, and students can learn all about seasonal change, and the 6th grade standards talk about that. And we have like a whole unit on like the sun and the moon and the solar system and seasons and how, you know, the movement of everything affects the seasons and affects temperatures at different times of the year, as well as in energy transfer. So this is a project that actually encompasses about half of my standards. So it's really worth my time because the students can talk about rocks and soil processes. They can talk about plant needs and plant processes, and they can learn about their solar system and seasons at the same time. So I started at the beginning of the year, and we really dig into what plants need. And then because we're in North Carolina, we can't plant until the coldest part of the winter. Otherwise, our plants would come up without having any hard freeze and without having any flowers. So we had to actually freeze our tulips in the freezer for about 14 weeks. And then we brought them out just recently to plant them. So the cool thing about this is it has so many resources. It tells you how to get started. It gives you a step-by-step guide and lessons. And it also gives you some idea of the objectives so you can match them up with your state's objectives. There are maps that you can visit. And when you go to these maps, you can see all of the tulip gardens that have been planted. So here's where you report them. Hold on, I gotta get to the right one. So this is the tulips that have emerged, and this is the tulips that have bloomed so far for this school year. And all these brown dots show you which ones have been planted. So you can actually zoom in and you can see there's another garden in Raleigh that has been planted. And so we have not done our reporting yet because we're just finishing up our planting, but we're gonna do that soon. So it'll be really interesting to see how these tulips come up and bloom in comparison to ours because we're in a coastal climate and they're inland. So their climate's much different than ours. So students learn a lot about how these different climates affect them, and that feeds right into me learning in 7th grade science, which is all about weather and climates. So it's a really worthwhile project. I spend the entire year on it, at least through late spring, and students have a lot of opportunity to collaborate with each other, to follow the inquiry process, to read, write, think, and talk about science every time we go out to the garden to check on things. Once I get them started and I've taught them how to, check for temperature and weather changes and signs of spring, then I can send like 2 kids out together to the garden to come back and report, and we can keep it in our journals. And it doesn't really take much time out of my everyday, but it's something that allows students to follow the inquiry process over a long period of time. And it's very meaty as far as the number of standards that I get to pull in. So it's a great tool for spiral review of all of the things that we're learning in our grade. So I'm about to go pick up my class, but as soon as they go to breakfast, we'll head out to the tulip bed and I'll show you our garden. So here we have some tulips that have been planted, but we have to cover them still. And as part of the project, the students had to go around and take temperatures in different parts of the school grounds and figure out which would be like an ideal temperature representation for our region and have the ideal amount of sun every day and things like that. So they determined that these raised beds right here were the perfect place. So that's why I went ahead and planted in this area. We're planting some according to the protocol because you have to follow the exact amount of inches that you bury them. And then we're planting some according to the guides for the region because they don't really line up. And you can't participate in the scientific data collection unless you're following the exact protocol. But I know from experience that the ones that are planted 7 inches deep are probably not going to do very well around here unless something happens this year that's different from the other times that I've tried it. So I called and talked to the extension agent office and got recommendation for how most local gardeners plant around here for bulbs like that, considering that we're in a coastal region. And I'm going to plant some that garden in some of these beds over here. So students will have the official garden here in the front, in the middle, and then the experimental over here. So I'm hoping that we get some good blooms that people can see from the road and get them hyped up and excited for life science. A really nice little area. Our 21st Century After School program got funding to do this a number of years back. They created all of these raised beds, and previously there was a garden, like family garden club, and people could come out on Saturdays and tend to one of the plots and plant vegetables and things like that and share with the community, which I would love to see that start up, but I just don't have time to dedicate it to that right now because of all the other things that I'm involved in. We're getting ready to have a team meeting, so I only have a few minutes left to talk to you about this today. But I just wanted to say that one of the things that we discussed in our curriculum team meeting was the necessity to make sure that if you're doing a project, that the amount of time that you're spending on the project is in proportion to the number of standards that you are working with. So for example, I'm working on this project. It is a basically year-long project. I don't work on it every single day of the whole year. There are times when I'm spending more time on it than others because, you know, when we plant, we spend more time. Before we plant, we spend a lot of time learning about it. But that's when I'm direct teaching and introducing the new material for those standards. And then we come back to it and we'll cycle back and discuss the standards and kind of review. But really, you don't want to get involved in a project where some part of the project is taking a really long time, but you're not really getting a lot of bang for your buck. One way that you can make sure that you are planning for this is to use rubrics for students to understand what they're going to be graded on and how many points will be for each part of the rubric. So in advance of doing the project, you can share the rubric with your students, talk to them about the goals of the project, what we need to spend more time on, what we need to spend less time on, and then create some sort of a pacing for students so they understand this is how many days we have to do this part of the project. That allows you to keep visual reminders in front of your students and also just keep them focused on the right thing that's actually going to benefit them at the end of the year when they take their exams. So my next teacher tip video that I will do will be about creating and using rubrics to help you assess your projects. I hope you've enjoyed this Teacher Tip Friday. Everybody have a great day wherever you're at. Don't forget to work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen.